If you're a history enthusiast, first of all, what's your favourite World War II tank? After all, the vast majority of history enthusiasts online seem to already really study World War II and other post-1914 wars. You don't hear many mention King Edward I of England or Korea in the 1500s. Of course, you should study the Second World War. It was by far the most politically, socially and technologically revolutionary eras in human history, and much of it still affects the world today. It just seems that history enthusiast tends to only ever mean World War II. Tangent aside, I'm sure many of you will know of a historian named Dr. Mark Felton. He's a creator who shares more unheard of stories of 20th century conflicts, focusing on World War II, although his work does extend to Cold War and pre-war topics as well. Dr. Felton is a strictly non-political historian. Foreshadowing is a narrative device who's written a number of books on the Second World War. 2 were reported to be adapted to feature films, although the last update on Felton's site is dated 2015, making them the second most anticipated World War II productions, behind Steiner's Counterattack. Amassing over 2 million subscribers, holding a PhD and having an extensive history, in history, Dr. Felton is by no means a novice, nor is he uneducated or unrehearsed. His work has been acknowledged in the mainstream for over a decade now. Back in 2013, he helped locate the graves of British soldiers killed in the Sino-Japanese War in 1937. BBC News only cited him as a military historian, but the UK government gave him credit. By the way, why does the Royal Ulster Rifles Museum have this flag on display? It looks like a fictional, censored Nazi banner, which wouldn't even belong in a museum. Speaking of museums, why am I mentioning Felton? Well, I've been a fan of his work for a while. His videos are nice to listen to while working on model kits. However, one day while browsing YouTube, I saw this community post. The morons in charge of this museum should hang their heads in shame for the cultural vandalism they have just committed. The government is also culpable in my opinion for its failure to have stepped in to repair the vessel, but it doesn't take a genius to work out why they didn't. I fear this appalling act will be followed by more so-called museums in the future. Strong words from such a strictly non-political historian. No idea what Felton is referring to when he says it doesn't take a genius to work out why the Conservative government didn't fund the repair. I think Rishi Sunak has his priorities set on mocking murdered trans teenagers rather than funding a repair to a small ship in Liverpool. What repair, you may ask? De WADDEN was a ship built by the Netherlands Steamship Company in 1917. It spent much of its life travelling across the Irish Sea, carrying goods between Liverpool and the Republic of Ireland. During the 1980s, it was dry docked for restoration, before a review in 2022 deemed it unsalvageable. The museum did attempt to rehome the ship back in 2022, whether it be in a dry dock or a museum. However, no applicants could sufficiently maintain the ship to the standards the museum wanted, leaving the only option to be deconstruction. Hannah Cunliffe is a part of National Historic Ships UK, an independent organisation that provides advice to local and government organisations on ships. She hoped for De WADDEN to be preserved, since there are only 3 remaining ships of its type to ship goods across the Irish Sea. Cunliffe also stated at the time that NHS UK, no not that one, would be willing to act as an advisor for any potential buyer looking to house the ship. I would assume that her organisation was involved in the process to find a new owner for De WADDEN. Assuming this, it's safe to say that no buyer was able to meet the standards for rehousing or restoration. In light of this decision, the museum, National Museums Liverpool, announced it recorded and modelled the ship's exterior and interior, and would be collaborating with a company to produce a virtual tour of the ship. While this is by no means equal to physically standing on the ship, being able to access the original artefact, this is at least an attempt to preserve and digitise history. De WADDEN was unsustainable, according to the museum. The restoration effort would have seemingly cost far too much money that the museum couldn't allocate to it. More recent headlines suggest that the museum is currently dealing with workers' strikes related to pay, as well as a £15 million renovation of the docks, so additionally allocating the restoration of De WADDEN, in hindsight, may have not been feasible. Personally, I'm thankful that I wasn't the person in charge of deciding whether my museum should destroy a culturally significant artifact or not be able to pay its workforce. I'll leave that decision to someone else. Disappointment, of course, has been expressed. Hannah Cunliffe also gave a statement on the deconstruction. Despite her disappointment, BBC News notes that she is pleased that the National Museums Liverpool will be working to their guidelines to ensure that she is fully recorded and deconstructed in such a way that significant parts can be kept or rehomed, and her story can continue being told. Despite the loss of a historical artefact, efforts have been made to preserve the history of this ship and allow it to be shared with future generations. And after all, is that not the goal of history? To preserve the past in some form so we can explore and remember it in the future? Now, I've used around 3 sources in that section to describe to you the story of the WADDEN and how we've gotten to where we are now, but I've conveniently omitted one source, the source Mark Felton cites. There's a reason for this, of course. It's a Daily Mail article. Unpacking the Daily Mail's chronic lying problem is too large of a scope for a video about a historian and a ship. To give the synopsis, the Daily Mail's reputation is so poor, even Wikipedia has banned it from being cited as a source. In fact, this was the first source Wikipedia ever banned. 2 years later, in 2019, Microsoft Edge incorporated an extension into the browser, the misinformation detector NewsGuard, which was warning users not to trust the Daily Mail. To demonstrate the issues with citing the Daily Mail, often criticised for its sensationalism, I've selected a headlining article from the Daily Mail's website to read and dissect. Apologies for sounding like an English or media studies teacher, but I do feel it's worth acknowledging how the Daily Mail writes articles. We shall fight them on the beaches. Cafe on Normandy's Omaha beach stormed by the Allies during D-Day, quote, tells British soldiers it won't serve them because they are English. Already the patriotism is at the forefront of this article, reminding people of the Second World War, appropriating the famous Churchill quote. The Daily Mail always makes sure to capitalise a word or two in their headlines. It's a trick used to make sure that you read certain details first, that way you enter the article with a pre-established opinion. In this context, you're not asking yourself, why are British soldiers not being served? You're asking, why aren't they serving English people? Which isn't necessarily accurate to the situation, but attempts to victimise English people, which are a much more sizable population of people to fearmonger to than just soldiers. After all, the Daily Mail is known for its fearmongering. The article spends its time describing the poor ratings of the cafe on TripAdvisor, the coast's history as an American landing zone, and Saving Private Ryan. The article does not comment further on the actual claim of the headline, apart from saying that they reached out with a comment. There is one source for the entire article, a tweet from a tour guide who said that the cafe refused to serve her, quote, well-behaved junior soldiers. Already, I have one thing to nitpick. Junior soldiers and soldiers aren't necessarily the same thing. What's more, the source conflates the two by using them interchangeably in her tweets. Junior soldiers are not entirely soldiers in the way that you may imagine them. Junior soldiers belong to a college run by the British Army, comprised of 16 to 17-year-olds who are preparing to join the army. They are technically armed forces personnel, although this practice has been scrutinised in the past. Feel free to read this in your own time. For that being said, to call these children both soldiers and junior soldiers is true on a technicality, albeit misleading with regards to their actual function. They are not rank-and-file British Army soldiers, they are children enrolled in an educational course to prepare them for active service. One comment not mentioned on the Daily Mail article was the tour guide agreeing with a commenter that her poor review wouldn't look good on TripAdvisor, threatening to review bomb a small French business aside. It was at this point that I started to wonder, how are other sites reporting this story? This would be an opportune time to include a ground news sponsor, but I'm too small of a creator to get one of those. But considering how sparse the Daily Mail was with information, I was curious to learn more. That's when I found 2 convenient articles, one LBC article and one French media article. This way, I can get a better understanding of the subject from both a British and a French perspectives. Just note that I don't speak French, so apologies if the translator was inaccurate. Annoyingly, the LBC article uses the exact same quotes, sources, reviews and structure as the Daily Mail, making their article just as sparse in terms of information. Funnily enough, the French outlet, CNews, actually credits the Daily Mail for breaking the story. No wonder LBC copied the format. This would also explain why I can only find 3 articles actually discussing the controversy. Jckistan update. The cafe responded to the controversy. 2 buses pulled up when the cafe was already full and they were denied service because the cafe could not serve them. They were already serving 30 odd people. This news broke a month ago. I'm not sure how I missed it, but we know now that the cafe was allegedly not responding based off of nationality. What we now know is that the cafe was overextended. The source that the Daily Mail used was unreliable and has now been proven to be actually factually false. The TripAdvisor page for the cafe has been review bombed. It's now sitting at 2 stars, meaning the Daily Mail's now false, originally misleading article from an unreliable source eventually led to the stress and the review bombing of a small French business because of a misunderstanding. The Daily Mail is a bad source and you should not use it as a source. That's when I realised the correlation, the timestamps. The Daily Mail posted their article at noon on the 30th of April, LBC posted theirs at around 5:30pm, and CNews followed up at 7:50pm local time. So what actually happened? A poorly staffed cafe caused social media attention after a customer's tweet went viral. The Google Maps reviews in recent weeks have been fairly complimentary, primarily the past month. Funnily enough, the most recent TripAdvisor review was in 2022, so either disgruntled Daily Mail readers aren't leaving reviews, or their reviews are being filtered for being malicious. Either way, with no further information from the cafe nor from the tour guide, the claim of discrimination can't really be investigated further. Oh, and one more thing. The post directly below this tour guide's tweet on her profile is a retweet of a Radio Genoa tweet. For those who don't know, Radio Genoa is a far-right profile on Twitter that primarily posts racially motivated content that frequently depicts Muslims, Asians and Africans as criminals. Such content includes calling pro-Palestine activists Islamic terrorists, or insinuating 20 Asians represent, quote, known child abusers in the UK. This is called cherry picking. It's not exactly a great look when the Daily Mail's source has far-right extremist content on the exact same page. Kind of saying the quiet part out loud. Anyway, we've established how the Daily Mail inflates small stories with unreliable, questionable sources, but does it do the same with the WADDEN article? As with the last article, the Daily Mail are quick to remind you of the ship's role during World War II. I mean, hell, the word Nazi made it into the first sentence of this article. Another notable point made in the first sentence of this article is the claim that the WADDEN will be replaced with a slavery reflection room. We'll see later why I have such an issue with this, especially it being in the first sentence. The Daily Mail goes on to claim that unnamed historians condemned the move. I've already shown a historian who I suppose criticised the move. As you already saw, she was disappointed, but happy that the ship was being preserved. Granted, I don't have the source that the Daily Mail is using to justify arguing that historians called the move an abomination. Then again, neither does the Daily Mail, seemingly. After all, if you had a source, why not cite it? In a rare first for the Daily Mail, it actually cites the correct source. It quotes the NHS, no not that one, entry for the WADDEN on its website. Underneath, an image of the deconstruction, complete with the caption, "The historic vessel will be replaced with a slavery reflection room as part of a redevelopment of Canning Dock in Liverpool." We'll get back to this later. For now, note how definite the Daily Mail seems to be. It will be replaced with a slavery reflection room, even if they can't find any evidence to support this claim. And now for the most outrageous paragraph on this entire article. For starters, the Daily Mail claims the WADDEN was on display for tourists for almost 40 years. This is true, although visits on board have not been available for years, as far as I can tell, judging by the NHS, no not that one, website. Now, for the most egregious sentence in this entire article. Critics say the decision was taken to allow a slavery reflection room to be built at the bottom of the dry dock where she rested since 1987 to further a politically correct agenda. Critics say? Critics? What critics? I haven't been able to verify this claim whatsoever. Liverpool Museums doesn't say this, neither does the NHS. The BBC wrote 3 articles about the WADDEN, of which none mention slavery. In fact, Google produces 4 articles featuring the words the WADDEN and slavery. Hi, post-production Jckistan here. I have no idea how they managed it. I know for a fact that this was an accident, but the Daily Mail somehow got something right. I'm just editing this video now, and there is a 4th source. There is a new 4th link that explicitly mentions that the site that used to house the WADDEN will be used for part of the slavery site, explicitly stating that it will be the same volume as the slave ships. Fine, there might be a slavery reflection room. I've found a 2019 PDF from Liverpool Museums featuring a rendered graphic of their plans for the Liverpool Museums and the renovations, and it shows the WADDEN. There is still no mention of slavery reflection rooms. One is the Daily Mail, another is a Spectator opinion piece written a week after the Daily Mail's article, and one 2022 article detailing plans to renovate Liverpool museums. Quick aside, I actually checked the name of the author for the Spectator article. Peter Elson has written 1 article for the Spectator, and it's that one. Searching Peter Elson results in a sci-fi writer who died in 1998 and a tour guide. I suspect the tour guide is the author since he's from Liverpool. By the way, what even is political correctness? I know the Daily Mail doesn't even bother asking that themselves. PC is just a right-wing buzzword from yesteryear which they conveniently use to fearmonger anything that the far right doesn't like. But both Cambridge and Collins have definitions related to avoiding offence, which this proposal wouldn't be doing at all. It wouldn't be politically correct to completely remove a historical artefact and replace it with an unconventional or radically different attraction. It would be the opposite, in fact, politically incorrect. The article goes on. Maritime historian Peter Elson condemned the decision, calling it political correctness or wokery gone mad. Would this be the same Peter Elson that made that one Spectator article? The same Peter Elson with little to no online presence? I'd assume so. His biography on his website mentions writing for the Daily Mail. It is a little funny seeing the Daily Mail's named source be a Daily Mail writer who conveniently shares the same opinion and happens to have a qualification to put to his name. It's really interesting what you discover when you fact check. So, the Daily Mail makes several claims, go out of its way to hide the origin of one, makes another claim that is flat out debatable in definition, as well as makes a claim that has not been reported anywhere else, which I would go as far as to call a lie. Oh yeah, remember when the Daily Mail didn't cite a claim for anyone calling the move an abomination? It eventually does so. Jim Graves, chairman of Merseyside Adventure Sailing Trust, want to know why the funds could not be used to restore the WADDEN rather than build the slavery room. Mr. Graves said, "Breaking up the WADDEN is an abomination and an insult to Merseyside's heritage in general, and all the seafarers who crewed these sailing ships in particular." The Daily Mail continues to repeat the slavery room claim, despite no evidence to prove that this is even a real thing. One trust member, not a historian, used the word abomination, not the historians claimed earlier. Graves appears to be a well-respected figure in maritime circles, but to credit him as a historian is, in my view, poor journalism. I personally don't feel that being a member of a trust qualifies you to speak on behalf of the history of said trust topic.
Mr. Graves added, "It is incredible that NML, the very organisation trusted with WADDEN's preservation, can let her fall into such a derelict state that scrapping is regarded as the only option, with no positive alternative offered."
Graves is flat out wrong here. As we saw previously, NML made attempts to rehome the ship, via either another dry dock or a museum. We've already established that MNL did get offers, but in addition to National Historic ships, did not find any interest from organisations with the ability to preserve the ship. Once again, the decision to scrap the ship wasn't made in 2024, it was made in 2023. We've known for a year now that the WADDEN was going to be scrapped. Hell, in 2022, the BBC was reporting that NL was seeking investors to move the ship to a new site. Graves' comments are flat out wrong here. Positive alternatives were offered, but none bore fruit. To no one's surprise, the Daily Mail did not leave any evidence of any plan to turn de WADDEN's dry dock into a slavery reflection room. We still don't know who these critics were, but considering a quoted source just so happened to be a Daily Mail contributor, I think we can make an educated guess on who made that claim. So, what about Dr. Felton? In the 2 weeks that it's taken to be bothered to script this video, Felton's post has gained 13,000 likes and 2,000 comments. This is, of course, the least possible number of people who have seen the post. There are likely plenty more people who saw the post and didn't like or comment. We do at the very least know that a minimum of 13,000 people noticed Felton's post and regarded it as worthy of a sign of approval. 13,000 people were shown this opinionated piece from a so-called strictly non-political historian, potentially also seeing the misleading Daily Mail article alongside. So, what do people think of Felton's comments? Several of the top comments agree with Felton, with one noting how unusual it is for Dr. Felton to use the word moron to describe someone. I'm glad to know other people picked up on that, but nonetheless disappointed in the hypocrisy on display. Several comments blame a Labour council for the slavery room, which never even existed in the first place. One comment reads,
"I was drawn to your observation and read the appended article. You are, in my honest opinion, absolutely and tragically spot on. As I just said in response to one of the other comments, Orwell merely underestimated how long this would all take by 60 years.
So, Felton's reach has prompted some to not only read, but agree with the article. Allow me to refresh myself on what Orwellian means, using Collins and Cambridge dictionary definitions. No, the decision to deconstruct de WADDEN is not Orwellian. NML is making an executive decision on how it wants to make use of its own property, since the museum owns de WADDEN specifically. They have every right to deconstruct it. It is not a government controlling people's freedoms. Not even in the hypothetical, yet still false, slavery room is Orwellian. No one is being forced to go to the Slavery Museum in Liverpool. Entry to the site is completely voluntary and not forced onto people. In fact, many of the comments are focusing in on the slavery room. That's what a lot of people are paying the most attention to. Conveniently, it's what the Daily Mail knew would grab the most attention: culture war rhetoric. After all, sensationalist arguments and poor factual quality is what got the Daily Mail banned from Wikipedia as a source, following a debate on the forums. Their final verdict reads,
"Consensus has determined that the Daily Mail, including its online version dailymail.co.uk, is generally unreliable, and its use as a reference is to be generally prohibited, especially when other more reliable sources exist. As a result, the Daily Mail should not be used for determining notability, nor should it be used as a source in articles. The general themes of the support votes centred on the Daily Mail's reputation for poor fact-checking, sensationalism, and flat-out fabrication. Examples were provided to back up these claims."
I just want to say quickly, I'm reading this script on the 5th of June, and I've just realised even Wikipedia has pointed out the fact that the Daily Mail makes up details. The fact that there is no reference whatsoever to the slavery reflection room at all, no source, nothing, just shows that Wikipedia has a point. The Daily Mail does just bring things up in their articles, regardless of whether there's any factual evidence for it whatsoever. With that said, let's get back on script. Sourcing by New on Dr. Felton's comments reveals some interesting details. At Waffen SS Totenkopf, I'm not joking, that's their actual username, wrote,
Anti-white boat turns into anti-white museum. Totally reasonable.
Who's going to tell them that the WADDEN sailed between two primarily white countries during World War II? Also, a very interesting audience that World War II historians tend to get. Granted, it's just one SS badge wearing commenter, but personally, I'd be concerned if even one person with an SS profile picture felt comfortable on my page. Scratch that, someone else just commented, "We fought the wrong enemy." This quote, from what I've gathered, is a disputed quote from Patton regarding the war. Patton also described displaced Jewish victims of the Holocaust as subhuman, so I'd be careful quoting him, especially with regards to culture war debates. This same user also commented, "At least you aren't speaking German," a remark suggesting that the only outcome of the war was German not being the dominant language rather than, I don't know, the end of the Holocaust or war on the continent. So, let's wrap things up since I've been scripting this video since the 9th of May. 1. The WADDEN was a ship built at the end of World War I and used throughout the next 50 years, including during World War II, to transport goods between Liverpool and Ireland. 2. Following years of neglect, its owner, National Museums Liverpool, sought a way of rehoming the WADDEN with hopes for restoring it. With guidance from National Historic Ships, NML tried and failed to find a new home. 3. The year after, the decision was made to deconstruct the ship, with this taking place a year later in 2024. What can we learn from this? For starters, I'm disappointed in Mark Felton. He's a well-respected historian who's published many critically acclaimed books. He's greatly respected in the field and has been a source of trusted information for many people. It wasn't just me too. If you read the comments on his post, hundreds of people are mentioning how he's a trustworthy voice on the matter. Also, if you see someone cite a Daily Mail article as a source, you have both mine and Wikipedia's permission just to ignore it. Their journalism is right-wing pandering at best, flat-out lying at worst. If you're a history enthusiast, or if you're just eager to learn the truth about something, the Daily Mail is one of the last places you'd want to go. I feel like I should emphasise this again, maybe once more for good luck. The WADDEN isn't being replaced by a slavery museum, at least as far as NML is concerned in May 2024. If NML could afford to convert the WADDEN's dry dock into a slavery museum, wouldn't they have just not scrapped the ship in the first place? There is no agenda, no wokeness and no political correctness, as some people want you to think. This is nothing more than a museum cutting losses and aiming to make better use of the site for future purposes. It's unfortunate the historical artifact had to be scrapped though, but that's all it really is, unfortunate. I want this video to be a cautionary tale to history enthusiasts, to people seeking information on a subject, or anyone who reads a piece of information online. I don't want this video to be viewed as a call-out post to Mark Felton, who I'm sure has better things to do with his life than respond to a kid with a tiny audience who think he did a bad job. I feel it's worth acknowledging, at least, that plagiarism allegations people have made against Mark Felton. From what I've seen, they're concerning, but I don't have the time in this video, nor the energy in my body. Oh, and I should probably ask while I'm here, is there a reason why 7 Daily Mail articles promote both Mark Felton's channel and books?